much for coming. My name's Dana Fitzgerald, and I'm really excited to introduce these four panelists. Each of these four speakers today is not only a very accomplished poet and writer, but is also a seasoned veteran of the Missoula Writing Collaborative, which is our local nonprofit that places poets and writers in public schools to teach children about creative writing. Collectively, these four poets have many decades of experience sharing their wisdom and their joy, their love of writing.
75 years.
75 years.
Yeah.
Collective experience. It's
We're all old.
Speak for yourself,
They know
brother.
stuff. They're incredible. And so 75 years of sharing their knowledge and their passion for writing with school children, not only in the Missoula area, but also in many other towns in Montana and in some other parts of the country, in fact. So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say, hear their reflections on the writing process and teaching writing and sharing with kids. They're going to share some student work today, I think, and if we're lucky, maybe some of their own poems as well. So let me introduce each of them to you. Mark Gibbons. Mark is right here in the plaid shirt. Mark Gibbons' poems have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. He's the author of 8 books of poetry. His most recent collection, Shadowboxing, is his second book from Foothills Publishing. A 2013 Artists Innovation Awardee from the Montana Arts Council, Gibbons lives in Missoula, Montana, with his wife, Pam, and their 2 cats, where he works as a delivery driver and teaches poetry for the Missoula Writing Collaborative, the Montana Arts Council, 406 Writers, and MOAN. So that's Mark. Next to Mark is Cheryl Notte. Cheryl Notte is MWC's artistic director and a writer in residence. She is co-author of the teaching text, Poetry Everywhere, which some of you may have used probably. She has received numerous awards, including a Montana Arts Council Fellowship, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, a McKnight Prize for Literature, and an American Academy of Poetry Award. In 2004, she received the Cultural Achievement Award from the Missoula Cultural Council for her work in Missoula schools. She has published 4 poetry collections, The Descent of Heaven Over the Lake, Ghost Openings, a Northwest Publishers Best Book Award, As Is, and Gray Dog Big Sky. From 2011 to 2013, Cheryl was Montana's 4th Poet Laureate. So that's Cheryl. Next, we have here next to me is Robert Lee. Robert Lee, author of Black Bear Holds a Hole in His Paws and the novel Guiding Elliot, has published work in Cutbank, Cold Drill, Talking River Review, M.O., Writings from the River, now called Front Range, Northern Journeys, and in the anthologies New Montana Stories and Poems Across the Big Sky. He has taught for more than 15 years with the Missoula Writing Collaborative, with residences in Arlee, Ovando, Potomac, Big Sky High School, and also in Heidelberg, Alaska. Finally, last but not least, Marnie Krang, right here. Marnie Krang has taught creative writing for numerous universities, including the University of Montana, Northern Arizona University, the University of Alabama, where she's editor of the Black Warrior Review, and the University of Missouri-Columbia, where she was managing editor of the Missouri Review. Her collection of poems, Dangerous Neighborhoods, won a Montana Arts Council First Book Award. She teaches for MWC at Lone Rock, Florence Carlton, Lolo, and Hawthorne schools, as well as Seeley Swan High School. So, without further ado, I think I will introduce our first speaker is Mark Gibbons. So, Mark, go ahead.
Good morning. This thing is just doing what it does right there. We're not supposed to even look at that. That's never mind. Okay. I'm notoriously unorganized, and I started thinking about this last night, and I thought maybe the easiest thing to do was just to read some poems that I use in the classroom, along with some poems that students have written as a result of what we do. We go into the classroom and we share poems with kids, and I always read them some kid poems too, you know, and then they write, and then they step up after 10 or 15 minutes and read these incredible little things that they're not all incredible, but I mean some of them are incredible. Some of them are better than I can do. So we steal from kids all the time.
Oh, I don't.
But You know, for example, for years, one of the poems that, one of the things that I've done is a portrait poem with kids. And initially, I thought about the fact this whole year thing. It's been like 19 years ago.
20.
You and Robin interviewed me
19, yeah.
to do this job. Marnie was already teaching. Marnie and Cheryl were already on board. And I thought, wow, little tiny people, young kids. And luckily I had had a couple of kids, so that it helped, because I taught high school English for about a decade. And I burned out on that. But I thought, wow, I don't know if I want to do this. It's kind of scary to go into a room with all these little tiny people. And my poetry doesn't fit real well in the grade school classroom. You know? It doesn't, because a poet writes in their own voice, and that's what we're trying to get kids to do here, is to write in your own voice. But a poet writes in their own voice. Most of my voice is not permissible in grade school classrooms. It's just not. So I've crafted poems and been consciously made sure that I kept the voice maybe out of that range, so I could use a few of mine with kids, because they love it when you share your own work with them also, along with the work of other people. So anyway, see, then I digress and I lose track of where the hell I was before. But anyway, we'll go back to the idea of just, somebody's got a clock on me, right? Yep. I'm going to read a couple of things this is an example of a portrait poem, okay? A portrait poem is just a poem, well, obviously, that creates a picture of someone. And I read models to kids like, here's a model. This is one that I took from Ed Leahy, an old friend of mine and poet from Butte and Missoula. And the title of his poem is Gimp O'Leary's Iron Works. You hear a lot of lies about O'Leary, but he could seal a crack in steel no matter what the size. His arc welder would strike white fire, and a bead of blue-black rod would slide along between cherry streaks, and acrid smoke would curl away to leave clean, married steel, not too frail or buttered up, but straight and strong, hard as mill-forged rail. Of course, you might say, don't use that example as a metaphor for poetry. Welding is a matter of utility. And you'd be right. Still, I remember the look on his face when he'd lift his great helmet and sneak up on the finished job with his unprotected eyes. It was always between him and the piece of steel, a struggle of molecules and will. Often others would say to him, damn good job, or some such thing. If it was, he'd grin and look again, as if he thought the natural light would show a flaw or bridge that didn't fuse. Convinced, I guess, that in his struggle with the steel, he could seldom really win. He knew perfection could conceal the wound beneath the arc of his art. I liked him for that. That's a good poem. That's a good poem. I just love this poem because it does so much. You know, it gives you the great imagery of that scene and that place, and it gives you this guy without really giving you much about the guy, other than he's doing his work, and then his reaction to the other people's complimenting him on his work gives you a really strong sense of who he is, and then it gives you a sense of who the guy writing the poem is, because he liked him. You know, he liked that. So anyway, this kind of strong emotional impact that poetry has in my life, I love sharing that with kids. And of course, what happens as a result? Well, I mean, I give them something like this. It's like, you can make a portrait of somebody through their work. Easy enough, you know, okay. And you know, also showing them in their work. Then this is a great poem that Melissa Quasi shared with me years ago. It's by Harriet Mullen. It's called Mama Sains. Mama had words for us. We were crumb crushers. eating machines, bottomless pits. Still, she made us charter members in the Bone Pickers Club, saying, just don't let your eyes get bigger than your stomach, saying, take all you want, but eat all you take, saying, I'm not made of money, you know, and the man at the Safeway don't give away groceries for free. She trained us not to leave lights on all over the house because electricity costs money, so please turn the lights off when you leave a room and take the white man's hand out of my pocket. When we were small, she called our feet ant mashers. But each time we'd outgrow our shoes, our feet became platforms. She told us we must be growing big feet to support some big heavy-set women like our Grandma Tiddly. When she had to buy us new underwear to replace the old ones full of holes, she'd swear we were growing razor blades in our behinds. You tear these drawers up so fast. Mama had words for us, all right. She called us the wrecking crew. She said our untidy bedroom looked like a cyclone struck it. Our dirty fingernails, she called victory gardens. And when we'd come in from playing outside, she'd tell us, you girls smell like iron rust. She'd say, go take a bath and get some of that funk off of you. But when the water ran too long in the tub, she'd yell, that's enough water to wash an elephant. And after the bath, she'd say, be sure and grease those ashy legs. She'd lemon cream our elbows and pull the hot comb through these tough kinks on your heads. Mama had lots of words for us, her never quite perfect daughters, the two brown pennies she wanted to polish so we'd shine like dimes. Isn't that a great poem? And Harriet Mullen. And you can teach racism. You can teach American history with poetry in the classroom. All through a voice, the voice of a mother. And everybody's mother sounds like this, but this particular mother has a different story to tell than most of us in this room. Yep, we're all white here. You know, I mean, that's a reality of my life experience. I've lived here all my life in white bread America. And this whole issue that we're faced with in the nation now of race is, I don't get, I mean, I'm removed from it, but I'm so much a part of it because I'm so privileged in my existence here, you know. So anyway, this allows us to talk about race in the classroom. And it's just a damn good poem. And it allows them to think, okay, I can use the things that other people say in my poems. How am I doing on time there? Okay. 5 minutes. Oh, good. I'm moving right on. I'm going to read you one of mine, and then I'll read you a couple of things of the kids. And look at that. One silly little halfway, and I'm done. Okay. Assignment thing. You know, so anyway, here we go. This is one I wrote, a portrait. And I had my sister's mother, Jesus, my mother's sister, my Aunt Ernestine Ledbetter, which she always used to sign her Christmas card, the Leadpeckers. She was great. I love my Aunt Ernie. She was my favorite aunt. And so she was larger than life in so many ways. And so I wrote this poem for her. And I might do this before I start it. It's called Heart of the Storm. Aunt Ernie was big as her soup pots she handled like Tupperware, big as the refrigerator, chocked full as her heart. She taught bears how to hug and mother. No gate, no screen door hinges could survive her charge out of the house and across the lawn when her cubs came home for a visit. Arms spread wide, her beller and stride to enfold and lick those babies clean, buried the needle on the Richter scale. Pecos Bill couldn't fill her shoes. Each vat of potato salad, each barron of beef, the gallons of coleslaw and baked beans, homemade cakes and pies, the sheer volume of her work, her strength and her size seemed puny compared to that laugh, a laugh bigger than Beaverhead County. That tornado of a laugh stampeded cattle on Horse Prairie and scattered haystacks up the Big Hole, even rattled bottles in the Melrose Bar. My Aunt Ernie's riotous cackle and bawl ranged deeper than the Berkeley Pit, cleared skies from Canada to Mexico. She smoked cigarettes and drank Coke highballs, shuffled cards and plates, dealt strawberry pie. She rattled and coughed, laughed till she cried. She infected us, spoiled us, force-fed us her joy, fat, rich, and sweet. She'd take out her teeth, slap them on the table, and tell jokes till we howled like dogs, rolled on the floor, begged her to stop, belly up, done in. In Dillon, we could count on sunshine, wind, and seasonal flash floods. My Aunt Ernestine sang the thunder, milked raindrops from our eyes.
Yay.
Thank you. She was a dandy. And that allows, you know, I mean, and I throw that one in as this whole idea of exaggeration. Even though you're writing a portrait, yeah, you can exaggerate. You can use your imagination. You can do those kinds of things. And so they let go and they do whatever they, and I just, I got 2 minutes, right? Okay, 1 minute. Oh, 1 minute. Oh, wow. Down to the wire. This one is just called Dave. It's by a girl, she's an artist now here in town. I see her every once in a while. Her name is Carrie Workman. Maybe you know Carrie. She wrote this when she was like about 10 years old. It's a portrait she wrote of a guy. The title of her poem is Dave. When Dave does his gardening, he comes out in shorts and a t-shirt. His grass is always the greenest. On his back porch, he smokes a pipe that smells of tobacco. He has long gray hair and deep stress lines in his forehead that mark his kind and big personality. His yellow home under 3 big maples leaves dense shadows on the dark green grass. He lets out a big bellowing laugh at my grandpa's strange jokes. Dave never stays in winter, always goes down south, living alone in a sweet little house. He never feels lonely.
5th grader.
5th grader, yeah. I mean, and this is every once in a while, you know, you get an anthology where one lesson seemed to resonate with a group of kids, right? And I mean, this one is full of some dandy portraits. You know, it's just for some reason the portrait worked really well with these kids at that time. So I read these things over and over again. Sometimes teachers say, "Do you get tired of reading the same lessons and poems?" And I say, "Well, no, because I choose like good poems. You know? How the hell do you get tired of good poems? It's like getting tired of music, right? You can't. I can't. Anyway, I'm done.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. And we'll turn it over to Cheryl.
Okay, just, when my time is up, just poke me and I'll fall back down. Yeah, that'll do too. I can't sit. I hate sitting. My husband always makes a bet with me that I can't sit for 5 minutes, and he always wins. Reservation school. The poet asks the children to hold their breath and keep still. Eyes wide, hands covering mouths. They look around at each other, not wanting to break the moment until they gasp and laugh. Now, he says, right about silence. Silence is a rock, not moving, in a lake, says the brown-haired 4th grader in a whisper. I nod. And a few children like that, they begin nodding their heads too at beautiful thoughts. A little girl in braids with a waist as narrow as a wasp reads from her poem, Silence is a sad sob in the night. Wow, I say, oh man, could you repeat that? She shrugs, tosses off the line, which circles the room. A boy with a cut on his finger shakes it and puts it in his mouth. Silence is an empty jar in an old house. He shows me the hurt finger again. A little cowgirl stands and waits for quiet to say, silence is a window not opened. We smile tenderly at each other, nod. In this sudden outbreak of splendor, we are happy to be together. Finally, the boy who was working on his drawing says, silence is in a bottle and a basket. This is the end of class, and everyone lines up to exchange high fives and congratulations. Silence is when my baby sister is asleep. Silence is cats wondering. I roll this afternoon around in my mouth, something sweeter than a ripe peach or custard. How close the soul can come to the skin when the body is still so new. As artistic director, I evaluate all of our writers. And that was evaluating Robert Lee in R. Lee doing his poem on silence. Okay. No kids here. Great. Commotion. Comes up quickly as I turn my back. An agitated little boy quickly withdraws his hand while behind him the slightly larger and older girls frown and shush. He accuses them of stealing his work, using his words and laughing at his lines. Summertime poetry camp was his mother's idea. Leaving second grade after expulsion from a private school was not as bad as the previous misadventures. Shrill and panicky, he thrusts stiffly back against his chair, both legs unbendable at the knees. A small 9-year-old makes himself into a plank, eyes squeezed shut. I don't want to be this person. I have to ask, how are they stealing your work? Ajwa from Pakistan, a bright miniature woman of 20 pounds. And the girl next to her, deaf, shy, gentle, both shrug. Words can't be stolen, they're free. They're everywhere. Last year at camp, he touched his finger to his rectum and chased after the girls, all of whom were larger and faster. I asked him to tell his mother about it when she signed him out. Her eyes filled up. Oh, baby, she cried, not again. His hands reached to her face, stroking her skin, begging her to love him. Summer camp finishes with a poetry reading. Some kids whisper, swallow their words, or won't get up on stage. But he has worked himself into a state of dramatic exhilaration. He performs one of his series of epic poems, The Attack of the Killer Moth, old enemy of Neos and Perseus, asleep in a deep hole beneath a boulder. Sisyphus is nowhere in sight. Arise, the boy squeaks, his piping voice amplified. The soundtrack! La 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 la! He draws in the air with his finger, stiffly, dangerously. La 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 la! Sisyphus awakens and joins them in battle. Standing, flushed pink up his neck, his ears and face, even his blonde hair is blushing. He swings his arm beneath him and bows, gasps for breath, and searches the crowd for his mother's wet eyes. It turns out Buttfinger was born on the same day as me.
No coincidence there.
I'm going to talk to you about that later. Stickmen. Today we are making heart maps. The children take pictures and words, place them in the compartments of the heart, highways, swing sets, dogs, the same drawing every time. Stick figure family with various sizes and expressions, often holding hands. I suspect much of it is wishful thinking, like smoke coming out of a chimney. I lean behind him to see his paper, and suddenly stiff, he bristles. An early warning system. The body itself detects, working like an electric fence. The damage done to a person, we can't imagine. The boy draws his mother and sisters. Long, wavy hair, party dresses, big red smiles. The largest figure has no hair. Small dots for eyes. jagged mouth lined with fierce teeth, unadorned, a stick man with shrouded face, undifferentiated fingers, no details except rough whiskers or pocks or scars across his face. Is that your dad? He nods without speaking. His closely shaven red hair tightens on his scalp. What's that on his face? Does he need a shave? Shrug. He colors the dresses blue and then adds a stream behind them. Is the dad angry? His neck flushes. He's finished talking. He's adding fringe to the women's dresses, carefully coloring the orange cat, an intricate view of the sky from the small tent of an 8-year-old's wondering. One of the things that happens in the classroom is the kids tell you what they don't tell anybody else. They love and trust their poet. They know that we're as silly as they are. And so they tell us things that they haven't told anyone. And I've got a poem about that I'm going to read to you. Oh, wait, I'll read this one first. Stand still on the stairs. One of the great things about this work is that you see the kids 10, 15 years later, and they remember you, and they talk about what your class meant. Now, I know that teaching poetry has completely illuminated my life, because those kids give back 100-fold what you give them, and it's love, and it's trust, and I leave school every day walking on air and grinning. The look on the face of the boy brings me to a stop. Dark features, thick buzz-cut hair, and those eyes which first drew me, deep set, mysterious shifting spectrum, dark and light, sea and shore, water and fire. He struggles to recall. It takes him a bit to place me. 2nd grade, so far away from now. Recognition beams and his expression changes. Years ago, I visited his classroom and we wrote poetry. He bounds through the thick line of children and without hesitation throws his arm around my neck. You remember me, I say. You're so big. You're bigger than me. I'm so happy I found you. Described as moody or melancholic, neglected, a frustrated kid and a loner. When the class of 5th graders is propelled forward, his attention goes from our happy reunion to the gathered children watching. Most boys have given up hugging by now. The line moves on and he must join it. His face returns to its usual distant stare, angry, aloof, and bored. 2 laughing girls pull me away from the rest and run up to grab me. Remember when words once held us wrapped in vast possibility? A half circle on the carpet around me, wiggling and twisting, urgent with the need to sketch each letter, make ideas into words, electrified. Magnetic alpha waves on trapeze, elastic brains with more synapses flaring than there are stars in our Milky Way. Clenched fists, fingers reach, small hands propel the pencils carefully, sketching each letter in a line or twist, in certain positions to make words built of will and wood. We could almost hear the breathing of immense animals, the song of love the rat sings to a child in her bed. Beneath the scent of melting crayons, graphite dust, the cough that passes from one to another, beneath the ticking of the clock and the wet shoes on the heater, the smell of mittens and stuffed animals, glue and paper, the richest and most fertile crescent on the globe, those who have not yet been informed of their limitations. As to the sound, what I like is the voice of my father pulling me up from depths of water, glowing fish at my side, wrote the 5th grade boy. Milk falls right down my throat, a girl wrote. Open the windows of sound, says the teacher. Let me listen to your life. Silence, a boy writes, drains the world of its children. My father, said the sad king, he is like a cheetah. He is the king. The boy, his skin a mottled peach, swollen with love for his father, flushed with a sense of betrayal. The teacher catches my eye, mouths the words over their heads. He never sees his dad. His dad is gone. Make a copy, I suggest. Give it to your dad. His head lifts, reveals spanking blue eyes. I suddenly feel I'm giving him false hope, setting him up for another disappointment. He is busy rewriting the poem, and now he's drawing hearts across the page. I saw it, though. I saw the hope he had, faith and beauty, stamina and blood. Even if the dad's heart is a small walnut, the child maintains perfect and unconditional regard for human love, if that's what you want to call it. Thank you.
Marnie will take over.
I'm like Cheryl, I have to stand.
Yeah.
I should say that I have been teaching with the Collaborative from the beginning, 20 years ago, and the greatest joy for me was that I was able to become the teacher of my two sons at Lone Rock School. My older son, who got an undergraduate degree in creative writing, I taught for, I think starting in third grade, and my younger son, kindergarten on, and both of them are excellent writers and wonderful products of this program. So that was quite joyful for me. And I'm sort of become the Bitterroot writer. I've taught for 14 years at Lone Rock School and then Lolo and Florence. Even though I live in Missoula, I like that long drive. It's a time for contemplation. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. My whole background is incredibly academic, as you may have heard in the introduction. And I wasn't exactly sure what the audience was going to be. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to start with new fourth graders this coming Wednesday. And I thought I'd use about 5 minutes giving you a feel for what that's like. And then the rest of the time, I might outline some of my thoughts about the pedagogy of teaching young children. And I, too, have taught from kindergarten through Elder Hostel and sort of trained to be a college teacher, and was one until my ex-husband and I moved to Montana. But that's another story. All right.
Yeah.
And some of my thoughts on the philosophy of teaching, my philosophy of teaching, the use of models, and, the development, I think, of audience awareness in young writers. So anyway, I'm going to need a volunteer, and I'm going to ask Pam. So you're going to have to gasp when I come in and say, "She's tall." All right. All right. So imagine, if you will, I'm entering a new classroom with a new teacher, and the class is full of very quiet students. This is me on Wednesday. They've been read the Riot Act before I enter. The school year is still new, and they're still learning the limits of their new classroom teacher. And I'm going to assume that they've been instructed in the, quote, ready to learn posture. And I'll have you guys yes, Cheryl knows it perfectly. If you're ready to learn, you're sitting with your feet flat on the floor, posture straight, hands in front of you. Flat. Cheryl, you're going to have to put your hands flat. All right, eyes forward and on me. You're going to have to look sideways. All right. And I'm going to walk in, and I need Pam to gasp. Because everybody's dead quiet. They know they better not move a muscle. And usually it's a boy who can't contain himself. She's tall. Suddenly all the bets are off. They've just broken the spell. And I have a friend who calls this the hysterical recognition of the obvious. When you blurt out something, yeah, I am tall. So my response over 20 years is to turn every moment into a working teaching moment. So I say, I am tall. And then I'm going to follow that with a very obvious simile. I'm as tall as a telephone pole. And then I'm going to plant the idea of proper nouns into their little subconsciouses. I'm as tall as a ponderosa pine tree. And then I'm going to plant the idea of comparing the concrete height with an abstract concept. I'm as tall as the tallest tall tale. And I'm going to stop here, because inadvertently I'm going to encourage them to blurt out, and that's another no-no, blurting. Yeah. I don't want to lose my new teacher by undermining all her careful work to get them there, to have them ready for me. And I want her to understand right away that I value I understand the value of classroom control. I've actually had students tell me at Sealy High School last year that their teacher should do what I do to keep the class in control, and she commented on that. She wanted to learn that from me. But anyway, but I've also basically, by accepting the GASP, established that I'm a safe, funny person, and I know that I'm going to stay within certain boundaries. And then I look at the blurter, who I want to reassure. I don't want the blurter to feel so awful all day long. And I tell that blurter, and you're as cute as a ladybug crawling on my palm. And I've introduced the idea of the generic image of a ladybug, but I've added to it to crawl on a palm. So I believe that the brain is so plastic that all these ideas are just soaked up by all of us, even in some of us are advanced stages, but certainly by little children. And then I'm going to ask each of you, because you're in my class, to raise your hands if you can see a ladybug crawling on your palm. A lot of hands are going to shoot up. And I'm going to say, oh boy, do we have some poets in here. Whoa, dudes, you have imagination, and I can see that. And then I'm going to teach them my first of our 4 poetry signs. And these are signs that my classes have created over the years for me. And the first one is imagination, and it comes from SpongeBob SquarePants, which I've never watched. But I probably said imagination once, and somebody did like this. And it's like this, if you guys will join me. SpongeBob SquarePants, there's some character in there who goes, imagination, with just that tone. So look, you guys have to talk now.
Okay.
Imagination. So we'll try that 4 or 5 times, and we do have more that I introduce as we go. There's one for metaphor, for simile, for hyperbole. And then I tell them that right before we start to write, we're going to put on our caps. And that's a time when we can forget everything about math and social studies and recess or whatever. So we're going to go, imagination caps. All right, so we've got our first word of the day. And this is the first class, and I'll be doing this in 5 days' time. I do want to engage the teacher and demonstrate to her that she's part of this workshop experience. I'm assuming this is a brand new teacher who doesn't know me from Eve. But I don't want to just tell her that, so I'm going to demonstrate it to her. So I want to backtrack to that gasp about my height. I don't want to leave that untouched. So I comment on the manners that I was taught as a young child, and some of you, and I'm always asking for shows of hands and not blurting. So just raise your hand if you understand these rules. You're never to ask about politics. Some of you know that, okay? Religion, age, or comment on personal appearance. So I asked the teacher if she grew up with similar rules, and she usually did. And even if she's already marking papers, I engage her. I ask her what her rules are, and then we talk with the students. And they find all this very interesting. Why can't you talk about politics? Why can't you talk about religion? It's really important for me in these political cycles, especially with 3rd and 4th graders who don't know Donald Trump from Bernie Sanders, that we're not going to pick teams for politics, and we're not going to pick teams for religion. And I kind of like the way sports is becoming sort of a new secular religion, but we're not allowed to talk about sports either, especially football, in our poetry, because often that tends to backfire. And then I'm going to ask the class about their class rules, and I'm going to share some of mine. And at this point, I'm really assessing the different teachers, their expectations for class control. Dana told me that one of her students will be my student at Florence in the spring. And those 3rd grade teachers there are awesome, and they're extremely different. When I first started teaching 20 years ago, I was really frustrated by the teachers who allowed a great deal of chaos in the classroom. And I was really frustrated by the teachers who clamped down on the students. And now I've learned to, I admire and respect all of them. I see that every teacher's strategy, if it comes from a place of caring, really works. There's only one type of teacher that distresses me, and that's the teacher who seems to manipulate her students into thinking that her classroom is the best. There's something about that bothers me. But anyway, then we're going to start off on a rollicking first assignment that anyone can do to help me kind of assess the class's readiness. And I've learned so much from teachers, and I'm talking about pedagogy right now, but one of the things I've learned is you have to present an assignment. We've heard some great assignments and poems read in 3 ways, especially at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade level. You've got to explain it verbally and read some previous examples, and I do that, and I love to share students' work. I may often hand out a short explanation and then have them read it aloud. And then we will do a poem quickly on the board. And that's because there are 3 different kinds of learners: the ones who can learn from having it explained, from seeing it, and from doing it. And you have to teach to all 3 kinds of learners. So if I skip that step of doing it on the board, we're usually in trouble with some kids because they still don't get it. And so right when we start writing, after we've got our imagination caps on, those hands are going to shoot up. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But if we do spend some time on the board doing a class poem, then they know what to do. A few thoughts on assignments, and maybe I can sit down now, because here's where I'm going to do a little bit of reading. Pardon? 2 minutes? Oh, well, I've taken too long, too. One of my philosophies is I don't talk much in the classroom. we just get to it. But I do 3 kinds of assignments. One, which is a very strict imitation, and this is usually with middle school kids, where we will follow step by step a poet's line breaks, the way the poet turns the line, the way the poet creates stanzas and why. And of course, we use our own subject matter, but I think that this is kind of like a painter. If some of you have been to some museums where the young painters are learning from the masters stroke by stroke, I know that these students are absorbing everything when they work that closely with someone like Billy Collins or Mary Oliver. They're absorbing that person's strategies, writing strategies. And then the most frequent thing, I think, is what we all use, is the model as a springboard. And generally, we generally follow the poet's strategy. And so since I'm using up way more time than I've meant to, and I will be happy to answer questions, because I have a lot of thoughts about teaching poetry in the schools. But this is first a poem by the poet Jacques Prévert, who's French, a French surrealist poet, and then a poem by a 4th grade student at Lone Rock School. And he's giving instructions on how to paint a bird, and first you have to trap the bird. And I may go over about 1 minute, or maybe I'll cut this short. To paint a bird, first paint a cage with an open door, then paint something pretty, something plain, something elegant, something practical for the bird. Then prop the canvas up against a tree, in a garden, in a wood, or in a forest. Hide behind the tree without saying a word, without moving a muscle. Sometimes the bird comes quickly, but he could equally well take years and years before making up his mind. Don't give up. Wait. Wait years if necessary. Whether the bird comes quickly or slowly has nothing to do with the picture's success. When the bird comes, if he comes, keep absolutely quiet. Wait for the bird to come into the cage. And when he's in, gently shut the door with your brush. Then one by one, paint out all the bars, taking care not to touch a single feather. Then paint the tree, choosing the finest branch for the bird, and paint all the green leaves and the wind's freshness, the dust and the sunlight and the noise of all the insects in the grass in the summer heat. And then wait for the bird to decide to sing. If the bird doesn't sing, that's a bad sign. A sign that the picture's bad. But if he does sing, that's a good sign, a sign that you may sign. So now you very, very gently pluck out one of the bird's feathers and write your name in the corner of the picture. Now here's a 4th grader who's been watching a lot of nature shows. It's called To Paint a Falcon. And he writes about 2 birds. I don't know if he knows this, but they're copulating. And I love what he has the painter do at that moment. It's to paint a falcon. First, this is an amazing poem. First, paint a rocky, grassy cliff high above the raging sea. Put an endless mountain in the background so the peak skims the heavens. Then take the blazing sun away so all goes dark. Scatter the cliff with grass and the purity of life itself. Capture many seagulls and fill the ocean with fish and crabs and sea sponges, but leave the beaches bare. Then stand back and wait for a female falcon. One will do, but be still. To get her to come, cover the cliff in the tears of a seagull. When she comes, the male will surely follow. If he doesn't, after a short time, go home, because he never will come. But if he comes, wait. At one instant, it will happen. I cannot explain that instant, but you will feel it in your very heart, your very soul. At that instant, slash your canvas with a long brush to capture them. Then paint the arrows of black on their wings, and then paint the fire in their eyes, the fire of a fire that was put out, calm but still smoking. And then you have an image of those birds forever. But if you watch over the years, the painting will fade away as the bird's soul slowly dies. And as it does, its image dies too. So that's just one. That's a fourth grader at Lone Rock School. Certainly an accelerated fourth grader.
8 or 9 years old.
But I would, one thing I'm not going to do because I'm over my time, but I send poems as signatures. And you can't tell the student who's accelerated from the student who has learning disabilities. And that's what's so awesome in the classroom is every kid's going to have a hit. And they might have one every day, but they're going to have one over the 12-week period. So I went too long.
Okay. Nice, great poem.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm kind of the outreach guy for the Missoula Writing Collaborative. I've taught in Salmon, Idaho, and Sandpoint, and I teach in a 2-room schoolhouse in Ovando, and I taught for 3 autumns, 1 month each in Heidelberg, Alaska. Quite a challenge for me. And I find that, when you go into that new classroom each year with a new teacher, and I teach a lot of 7th and 8th grade middle school and high school kids. And you've got to choose good poems to get their attention, I think. And you have to make a lot of quick decisions so that you get them to be with you. And so a few years ago, I was in a high school and they had a brand new to me teacher, and she asked me if I would teach odes. And I said, absolutely, I love odes. And she said, will you teach Ode to a Grecian Urn? And I said, not in this lifetime. My 8th grade experience with poetry was Ode to a Grecian Urn, and I blame that for the fact that I was nearly 50 when I published my first book. But I do teach Pablo Neruda's Ode to Fire. Wild-haired fire, jumpy and blind, but studded with eyes, sassy, tardy, and unpredictable, golden star, thief of wood, silent outlaw, cooker of onions, renowned swindler, cloaked in sparks, rabid dog with 1,000,000 teeth. Hear me, heart of hearth, bush of undying roses, destroyer of lives, heavenly father of bread in ovens, etc. It goes on. But you get the picture. It's this wonderful poem with which to launch a discussion of metaphor. It's this great poem of images. It's got music. It's got those elements that we can then move into several discussions with and get students to write their own odes, try to fill them with metaphors. I enter schools, often in rural schools where they and even their teachers may not have been exposed very much to poetry. And I think that's the purpose of the collaborative. We go and collaborate with teachers because many teachers find teaching writing, teaching poetry especially, to be unnerving because they don't feel very competent. And so we can take and show them that it's not rocket science. And a lot of our our teachers become pretty good teachers of poetry also, which is our goal. But you also, you got to win over a class. And I remember walking into a class in Idaho where the teacher was the wrestling coach, and he was wearing sweats, and the room was full of jocks, and they were looking at me kind of askance. And, as one thing we do get to do, because we're not teachers in the program, is we get a little more leeway. And I'm the crazy poet with the beret, and so I can get away with stuff. And so once in this senior class, these guys were kind of, pretty reticent to do anything as girly as writing poetry. And they weren't sure about me. And somehow the subject of cooking, I don't remember, it came up, and I told them that I was a cook. And so one of the football players decided to tackle me, and he said, "You write poetry and you cook?" And I said, "Guys, if you learn how to cook dinner, she might stay for breakfast." And suddenly I had their attention. So one of the toughest audiences that I ever faced was going up and being the white guy in the Haida Indian village in Heidelberg, Alaska, a very impoverished village of about 350 people, 62 students, K through 12. When the senior class walked into my classroom, it was one girl, and so it was pretty challenging. I did this from 2008 to 2010. Spent a month there each year. I wrote back the third year to my wife Rose that even the dogs aren't barking at me this year, but everybody barked at me that first year. And so I ended up writing this little book of poems called Black Bear Holds a Hole in His Paws about this experience. And so I would like to start with a letter poem that expressed my angst in that first moment, that first few days of school. And then there's 4 poems in this book called Writing Lessons, and I want to read some of them because I think they express something the 4 of us have talked about together quite a bit. Is when you're teaching well, you're learning more than you're teaching. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about your students. You're learning about your art. You're learning. Some of those lessons are pretty painful, even. So, without further ado, letter home. Letter home, Heidelberg, Thursday, October 9th, 2008. My Rose, your wifely duties from afar include listening to me whine. It's lonesome as a coffin here, a third world paradise surrounded by riches money can't buy, can only contaminate, Alaska in the raw. From my doorstep, I see salt seas where shrimp boats ply, where seals feed on salmon, where whales breach, while cedar forests frame the sea, emerald green against slate gray, life nourished by near daily rains that sustain salt-free rivers where salmon run in millions. Why should your fishermen complain? I accept that I'm a stranger, but I fear they've seen my kind before and were less than enthralled. It's surely true that white men come to teach or preach, leave without a clue. I read book upon book about Haida culture, but that's not who these children are, teenage warriors out of touch with time. Coach Ron says these kids hate to write, says I should know, I tried to learn them English. I somehow doubt he's right. At tomorrow's staff meeting, I'll hope for feedback, beg a car. Without wheels, those salmon runs remain a taunting hour from my door. Watching me pack my books, clothes, gear, and lesson plans, you warned, bring your beginner's mind. And you were wise, but 8 days in, I'm not sure I've begun. finally realized that I didn't come there to be liked. I came there for them to write poems from the heart. And so, writing lesson. I am from earth and fire. I'm from the hellish reality. Yeah, Harley, tell me more. I am a legion of fears and nightmares, hatred, anger, drugs, and alcohol. Chime in, Caden. I am grinding till I'm tired, 'cause they say you can't quit grinding till you die. Hold him up, Marilyn. I am concrete. I am the gray that sits on a cloud. I am as solid as stone. Tell it like it is, Desiree. I can feel his beady eyes staring. I feel like I'm stuck in this class forever as he sits there watching all of us. Sorry, but it's how I feel, so don't be mad. It's just that you're a little creepy. Maybe if you loosened up a little more. Again, Caden, I feel pain. Blue, green, black, brown, red. Life is not a game and cannot be restarted. Dear Lord, you have taken so many of my people. I'm just wondering why you haven't taken my life. Like, what the hell am I doing right? Right on, Caden. Good question. Writing lesson. Marilyn has bloodied knuckles this new morning in Heidelberg, where women are warriors. Tone sports a purple shiner, a sheepish grin, both freshly returned from suspension. Softly, sorry, Tone. Yeah, same here. We'll get past it. Past it, probably. Though Marilyn punched not Tone, but her stepdad, and Tone was punished again by the woman he loves most, the mother who abandoned him. Will and Donald are cooking toast and playing grab ass while I take roll. Kevy is missing again and no one knows. Alan sleeps on his elbows, up all night hunting, I suppose. Stu shows up, another teacher. Stu shows up 20 minutes late, wakes Alan and offers extra credit. Alan pulls out a knife and heads out to gut the deer in Stu's truck. I introduced today's poem of address. Tone writes to his mom. Marilyn stares at the wall. Silas draws. Cat, large eyes, yawns. Laura leers. Stu rolls his eyes. We get past it. Everyone pens a poem before noon. Everyone except Silas, who can't more than won't, and Kat, who found hers on the internet and seems amazed when I find her out. 12:30, I punch out, pack the Jeep with fly rods and shift gears toward the river until tomorrow, when slumped bodies, wide eyes, hungry students, and angry poems tell tonight's tales. 2 more minutes, okay, so I'll finish with this one. Writing lessons. Lulu, I know you're my real mom and all, but you need to know this about me. I didn't know I was adopted until I was 8, realized what adoption was at 12, when I found out why I was sick to my stomach. How could a mother give up a child for drugs? I asked my students to write about Heidelberg. Heidelberg is unique and unknown outside, I prompted. Heidelberg sucks, was the prompt reply, uttered with teenage assurance and contempt. Missoula's teens would claim Missoula sucks. They didn't step over their drunk uncle on their way to school. Some did. Pain is not solely the province of isolated island towns. Alcoholism not native to Alaska alone. In small towns, though, everyone knows whose uncle is sprawled in vomit in front of the P.O. Here's this boy's uncle is most everyone else's cousin. So I stopped begging for poems about whales, summers spent long-lining, the taste of seal oil, or stories told by two-headed totems. My hair is orange, red, brown, the flames from my brain are 2 feet above my head. Oh, baby, feels so good to write this style. It was quite an experience, and all of us have had pretty marvelous and sometimes difficult and oftentimes wondrous experiences teaching for the collaborative. Thank you very much.
We're going to open this up to your questions for the panel, but before we do, just don't forget, after our question and answer session, please come up and take a look at some of these anthologies. Each of these poets, when they go to the school, is part of their job, in addition to teaching poetry, is to produce these wonderful anthologies of the students' work. So we have some examples from Arlie, Seaweed Swan, Potomac, Govando, all over the place. Lewis and Clark, and they contain some just amazing student work, often by very young students, even third graders, and writing some things that were going on.
I don't know, I hope I'm not doing the wrong thing, but I brought a box
You have a whole box of
of old anthologies, because I always had leftovers. And I just thought, if you want a copy of an anthology that some student wrote, we just got a grab box. You can just go through there and pick out and take something with you.
even better.
They're great to
To
have.
go, so
But
yeah,
we
you'll
could
be
have it,
impressed.
right?
And we have some brochures if you want to learn more about the the work that we did. So let's turn this over. What questions do you have for our panel?
Well, when you talked about kids talking about things that they don't say elsewhere, are there agreements with the schools?
Sometimes I get in trouble. I've gotten in trouble a few times because a child has revealed something to me and I've offered my suggestion and
You're not on agreement to share it with,
if the
Your
child's in
parents
danger, I have to report it. All of us
Right,
do it, so
right.
law. But there's a poem that I didn't have time to read about a girl who revealed things to me that were so horrific, and her drunk stepdad came looking for me at the school. So I hid in the principal's office. And then she and the assistant principal, who's a man, we all sat down together. This guy wanted to throw down with me because his daughter would call me for help when he was beating the girl's mother. So, but we do report anything sexual or violent or
Yeah,
anything that
any danger.
smells wrong or dangerous, yes.
I'd like to respond to that too. I have a good friend who was the superintendent at a small school, and she advised me to report anything that seemed odd. I had a second grade student. We were writing "Used to Be Afraid of It Now," and she was afraid of her bedroom, and that rang a bell for me. And so I did tell that to the school counselor. And what that does is it enables the school to begin a file which may be dead. But if there's something that is a red flag, then we have these 3 or 4 things that have been noted. And I really took that to heart, because before I would just think, well, that just kind of seems strange.
Yeah.
But now I actually, and I don't usually tell the classroom teacher, I just go straight to the counselor,
Yeah.
because the classroom teacher may be, in fact, may not want you to actually
Yeah.
share that kind of information.
Yeah, we're all kind of under law to do that, but also just common sense.
Yeah.
We see something that brings a big red flag.
And that's one of the advantages of being in schools for a long time.
Yeah.
Knowing the counselors, knowing the teachers. You kind of get a feel for how to handle those kinds
Right.
of red flaggy things you see in writing. Because, sometimes, as we've seen, some of these students are just incredible writers. And what are they looking at on the internet and film and whatnot all the time? It's these horrific stuff, so a lot of times I've gotten some things that I thought were, really scary, and
Not really about
and they
that.
turned out to be, just totally imagination.
Yeah.
That came out of stuff that they were experiencing. All the stories like that.
For question and answer, would someone please ask me to read the poem by the boy that's up there?
Would you
Oh, yeah, would you read that poem before you go there?
Hey, thank you. Good to see you.
When I first started the collaborative, I was at Prescott, which is closed now. I was there for 12 years. There was a boy named Nathan who came from a group home situation, who was always in the janitor closet / detention room, which smelled like wax and cleaners. And I asked the principal, why is that kid always in there? And the principal said, because he's bad, because he fights. because he's always fighting somebody. So I go into my fourth grade classroom and he's there. And so I said, I want you to do a free write for me. And the free write will be, what are you thinking? Don't interrupt yourself, don't correct yourself, don't edit yourself. What are you thinking? He wrote, why is it snowing? What am I thinking? The principal just came in and he said, I want you in my office. What am I doing here? How did the world start? Why did I wake up in my brother's dirty laundry? Why am I alive? Why does it have to be me that has to be getting glasses? Why don't I be the same as everyone? Why am I a foster kid? Why didn't mom be normal? Why were we so poor? Why does she like drugs? Why don't I live in a normal family? Why don't I have any friends? Why do I think of so many things? Why am I not like everyone else? Why is everyone smarter than me? Why don't I know my parents? Why doesn't mom and dad want me? Why didn't they want us? Why don't I know how to swim? Why are my ear tubes taken out? Why do I write so big? Why is it snowing? These are things I am thinking of in my head. I took the poem to the principal and to the counselor, and he was never in the detention room again. He got counseling for his rage, but that's the only way he could ever talk about it. Poetry indeed frees the soul.
And he agreed for you to publish that poem?
Oh yeah, he was thrilled. Kimberly, did you?
How is this funded?
We are a nonprofit. We write grants. We try to get the community to help.
We beg.
It's always a struggle. We had a lot of problems with the recession, with the collapse, but we've survived. We're 21 years now. And as you can see, we're mean as tigers. And so
20,
So you accept donations?
we do. I love you.
But
Tax deductible donation.
nothing under 5 figures.
I don't see a donation jar.
Well, what we have is the brochure, which has inside of it the donation sheet.
And an envelope and we're sending it.
I knew it was there, I just wanted someone to talk about it.
Thank you.
What a plan.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, because last year was a tough year and it got cut way back.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
quarter time residencies from what we had done before.
Both got some wonderful grants for
Yes.
this year. A lot of the Montana Arts Council and where else, National
Endowment.
Endowment. Can you name all the grants? There were a lot of them.
There were.
It was impressive.
We are expanding on the reservation into 5 schools.
Wow.
Pablo and Ronan, we're already in our Lee and St. Ignatius, and so that's very exciting. And in fact, some of the Native American writers, Allison Hedges Coke, they're up in our Lee working with the kids, and then at the Art Museum on Sunday, is it, or Saturday?
Saturday.
Saturday.
Okay, they'll be reading,
Yeah.
those children.
That actually leads
Yeah,
to
we-
a question that I had in my mind that maybe will spark some other questions from you. I'm pretty new to the collaborative still, but last year I taught at Lowell Elementary, which I love for various reasons. But one of my favorite things about it was that the 3rd and 4th graders there produced a lot of really wonderful pieces about Native American culture. So they wrote poems about powwows, poems about visiting their grandparents on the Rocky Board and Blackfeet reservations, even a piece of historical fiction about a bison hunt. And it kind of changed the way I was thinking about writing for kids, because I'd always thought of writing as being primarily a means of personal or individual expression. But teaching for the collaborative made me realize it could also be a really important vehicle for cultural expression. So I wondered if any of you, you've talked some about your experiences on the reservations and in the Indian village in Alaska. I wonder if any of your experiences support this view, and do you think that the work that the collaborative does in the schools can help to empower children from diverse cultural backgrounds and to give a voice to these kids, especially our Native American population in Montana?
They're the ones that we affect the most. Kids with issues, kids with trouble, aged kids, because they have something to say, and there's nobody to say it to. They don't know what their options are.
Had the strangest thing happen last year at Florence. 2 lovely little children in 3rd grade, both of them were adopted. from China, and both had cleft palates and cleft lips. And they were adopted from different orphanages. And the little girl was, she was irrepressible. And she was bragging about how much better her orphanage was, that she had been than her brother's orphanage. And the other students were just kind of like, whoa. And it became a really kind of a tender moment where everyone understood what these two kids had been through. And I don't know if they would have had that kind of open conversation if they hadn't just shared their poems about their lives. And she had so many questions in this poem, which I then told the teacher. Her questions were, why did my mom leave me in the park? Were the police after her? She just had incredible questions. And so I connected her with the teacher, hopefully to connect her with the mom. Yeah. But anyway, absolutely, I think it's the kids who may be kind of outsiders who are really brought in. And sometimes they're outsiders for cultural reasons, and sometimes they're outsiders for reasons like Nathan's, broken families or troubled families. And I think that's one of the important things.
Or disabilities.
Or disabilities,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, because it's amazing, the kids that a lot of times don't do much of anything with the classroom teacher, like you mentioned earlier, come out in these poetry classes and do incredible work. I mean, it's and then they get up and share that in a group of their peers, and it changes the whole dynamic of where they're at in that classroom. The level of respect from the other kids just like goes, oh, that was Bert.
Who wrote that?
And the native students that I've worked with get to talk about their pride. And I've taught up in Arlee, where there's a mix of white students and native students, not always a comfortable mix. And all of a sudden I get poems about powwows and things and native dancing. And I'd like to read you a poem that I got up in Heidelberg by a young girl, I think maybe 6th grade, I'm trying to remember. Ashley wrote, "My Haida heritage. My Haida heritage means to me a culture that is fading, but is still full of love, singing, dancing, and language that we need to learn. Button-robe blankets we dance with, black on red, learning language that is slowly going away, fishing every day of summer, camping and hunting around November, seeing whales while out on a boat ride, canoeing out in the bay, helping your parents jar some fish, picking sea greens, then jarring them, fish spread on a cracker, having to eat fish and deer for lunch or dinner, picking berries with your mom or aunt, then going home and making jam with the berries for the summer and making smoothies with leftover berries. All that's what I think being Haida means." This cover of this book is part of the totem park that's in front of the school there. And you'll notice over here in the corner, there's a yellow four-wheeler, and all these kids have computers and cell phones and totem poles, and it's confusing. And they get to talk about it. And I think what we do is valuable for that reason alone.
Even Lone Rock was really confusing because, some of you know where Lone Rock School is, up 3 Mile on the Bitterroot? It's its own independent school district. The oldest school district, I think, in the state. But there's a clash of cultures, and the clash stops clashing in the poetry workshop. But it's kids who are coming from families that homesteaded, and kids who have come from California and they're sleeping in the third wheel in their parents' sister's driveway. And so there's so much disconnect between their life experiences and somehow being able to share it through poetry. And as Cheryl's pointed out, it is a way to open up the soul. I don't know, it just brings a kind of mellowing and tenderness to the class. I think the teachers feel that too.
Yeah. They become a community because they interact with each other about their truth. They speak their truth. They support each other. When they're done writing, they get up and read. They sit in the author's chair in front and read out loud. And then the other kids applaud and cheer. And the kid is beaming and different. One year, a 5th grade teacher told me, "Why do you let the boys be so silly?" And she said, "They're writing about unicorn Pop-Tart farts. Now, why do you let them laugh and be so silly?" And I said, "How long do they get to be silly? Pretty soon, they have to be men. There's no crying, there's no giggling, there's no my kitten, there's no Pop-Tart fart." And I said, I like them silly because if they connect writing to humor and fun and play, then I've won.
And they can grow up to be silly too.
Yeah.
Look at us.
I mean, that's the thing, yeah, exactly. The child inside gets to live into adulthood if you're a poet.
Yeah.
That's the sweet part.
So the Flathead Children's Reading is Saturday at 11:30 at the Art Museum.
Good.
Good.
Other questions you have?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.